Author opinion of Dennis Keane at the History, Geography and Architecture, Culture and Life Manners of Kazakhs in the program Discovering Kazakhstan.
Salam, привет, and hello. I'm Dennis Keane, and today on Discovering Kazakhstan, we will be discovering the traditions and cultures of the easternmost part of this country. This is a place that is known for the timeless Altai Mountains and for the historic city of Uskmin. It's a place where people take pride in the crafts and lifeways that have been passed down for centuries by various cultures. Come along as we explore these diverse traditions in a diverse land. There's an assumption that some people make about the cultural homogeneity of the Central Asian countries that end in Stan, that Tajikistan must be full of only Tajiks, and Kyrgyzstan must be full of only Kyrgyz, and thus that Kazakhstan is the land only of Kazakhs. But in fact, what is remarkable about this country is its diversity. In this country, you can find so many ethnic groups that you would never expect to find in this part of the world, from Jews to Koreans to Chechens. And there's one place in eastern Kazakhstan where all of these cultural groups are represented, what's called the Etno-Derevnya, or the cultural village of Uсть-Kamenogorsk. Now known by its Kazakh name of Uсть-Kamen, this provincial capital is at the center of one of the most diverse regions in the entire country. From the center of the city, we've come across the river Irtysh to a quiet, breezy museum village on the left bank. This cultural village is hands down the most impressive museum complex I've ever seen in Kazakhstan, if not anywhere. Every major ethnic group in the province has its own center, with a full-scale traditional home that is full of fascinating exhibits on traditional life. What may at first look like a quaint village street is in fact an illusion. A huge array of architectural models. Nobody lives here, and the homes aren't even heated. They're like full-size dollhouses for the visitor to explore. The architectural diversity reflects the ethnic diversity of Kazakhstan. Where else in the world can you see a Korean hanok across from a Ukrainian chata? Each home is attentively decorated both outside and in. The interior of each house is filled with traditional furniture and objects that can teach us about the lifestyle of Kazakhstan's many ethnic groups. The largest ethnic group in Kazakhstan is indeed the Kazakhs. People who were historically nomads and are famous around the world for their traditional circular mobile tents that we call yurts. Kazakhs call them in their language kiz-i, which means felt homes, because they would be built out of wooden lattices, then covered in the miraculous weatherproofed material that we call felt. What many people don't know is that Kazakhs also made yurts out of stone. They're called toshala, and they're commonly found in eastern Kazakhstan and amongst the Kazakh populations of Mongolia and western China. They would be used traditionally as storage. In the winter, you would store your various tools here, and in the summer, when it was hot outside, but in the thick of dairy season, you would put your milk and your creams inside of here to keep it cool inside the stone structure. These toshala are rarely seen these days in Kazakhstan, but in western China, where I've traveled through the Altai, they continue to be proudly used to this very day. These stone yurts would often be found next to the homes of wealthy Kazakhs, who, starting in the 19th century, would often live in European-style brick homes like this, rather than in the modest felt yurts of their ancestors. This home, for example, is modeled after the home of the most famous of all Kazakh poets, Abay Kunanbayev, who was originally from eastern Kazakhstan. If we go inside the home, we can see what traditional life must have been like at one point for these wealthy Kazakhs. I'm so used to seeing the cramped cooking quarters of a traditional Kazakh yurt that it's strange to see such a big space in the home here that would have been used for cooking. This room too apparently would have been used for refrigeration, as it is made out of stone, just like tushala. They could keep some cold things in here for the winter time. In here we can see traditional cooking vessels, such as this large kind of wok called a kazan. But you can also see some fragments of the traditional life of nomads past. This, for example, must be some kind of animal stomach that would be filled up with cream to make a traditional kind of Kazakh cheese. Kazakhs would sometimes use grains, and they would fill this kind of wooden capsule here with these grains and use this to crush them. Elsewhere, they might use a similar kind of churn to make fermented dairy products. So in this corner, we have this guy. You might fill this up with horse milk, churn it back and forth, and in the end you would get the fermented horse milk product, famous throughout the steppes, known as kımız. In the middle though is the hearth, the most important part of the Kazakh home, as this fire represents life. And from here, the smoke would go up into the open air above. Here, instead of the wooden circular ring known as the shangarak that you would traditionally find in a Kazakh yurt, we have a unique kind of sunscreen. Here we have a kind of living room. This is kind of hallway. And then entering this room, this is a kind of dining room. And it's very curious to see, just as in a traditional yurt, the guests would be sitting here at a low table called a dastarkhan. And here you could be drinking tea out of these small little tea bowls that they call piala. In the corner, you'll find something that you would never find inside of a Kazakh yurt simply because it wouldn't fit. This kind of massive circular oven that was often found in Russian homes of the 19th century. These would be fed with wood or coal and would be used to heat the entire home. But during the summer, when it was quite hot outside, you could don some traditional clothing like this, not too thick, in fact, really quite thin and light, nowadays made out of velvet. So when your guests were coming over, you could put on your ornamental clothes. This is called a chapan, kind of traditional robe here. On top of your head, you would put this traditional hat called a kalpak. And as a nomad, you would kindly greet your guests to your home. It's been a real discovery for me to learn that Kazakhs built not just felt yurts, but also stone yurts and brick homes. And it was an even bigger discovery for me to learn that they also built log houses. Especially in the timber-rich Altai mountains of eastern Kazakhstan, these log homes are quite popular. And we went out to these very Altai towns to visit a woodworking master who lives in such a traditional log building. We have come to a special village here in the Altai Mountains that is called Chernova back in the day. Nowadays, they call it Akhaynar. And we know that we're in a special place as soon as we pull up to this town and we're greeted by the town mascot, the snow leopard. He's got a nice smile on his face looking up at the sun. And indeed, it seems like everybody in this neighborhood is happy to greet us and show them how they work with their hands. We're actually going to be able to get to meet the guy who made this very sculpture. In this case, this is made out of cement, but he is a master woodworker. So let's head on over to his studio. we're coming to the home studio of Aykanar's most famous local artist, Baykazı Jakyarov. You can see right away that he is a man who works with wood, because all around his yard are these scraps and sticks and logs that eventually he can transform into some amazing art piece. What I think is really neat is that even though Baykazı himself is ethnically Kazakh, there's this kind of Russian woodworking tradition that he also incorporates. We can see, for example, the little shed that he's working in for his winter studio itself is covered in these kind of classic Russian wooden ornaments, giving it this charming appeal. So let's go inside and see what he's up to. Assalamu alaikum. So this is Baykazı himself. We can see that he's working here on this special kind of dish made out of wood that they call an astao. And so he's sanding away some of this. We can see on the end here we have the horns of some mountain goats. And there in the middle, when it's done, you fill that up with a special Kazakh dish called beshparmak. I'm not surprised that Baykazı fell in love with the craft of woodworking in this village of Akkaynar, because this is a place that has long been known for its wooden architecture. After all, we're right below the forests of the Altai Mountains, and they had a lot of wood to work with. And what wonders they did with it. The village is full of these old homes covered in these carved wooden window frames called nalichniki, and every single house has its own distinct nalichnik. This house is unique in that it has this beautiful decorative porch going up to the second floor. This is how these old homes would often be built, is that you would have the living quarters up on the higher floor, and down here there might be a cellar. Here we can peek over the fence and look more at the beautiful logs of this old home that they say is more than 100 years old.
The old Russian home in Akkaynar may look like a museum piece, but a family still lives there. Back at the cultural village, you can find old Russian homes that you're able to walk right into and snoop around.
This Russian home was built in the early 20th century across the Irtysh River in the other part of Uskhimen. It was then brought here piece by piece to become a central exhibit in this cultural village. It belonged to a well-to-do Russian family, and thus it represents a unique glimpse into this social class during the pre-Soviet period. Many of the homes in the cultural village can be loosely characterized as Slavic in style, so that is belonging to people like the Russians and the Belarusians, the Ukrainians and the Poles, or people who were influenced by the Slavs like Tatars or Jews. And these kind of homes are generally built with beautifully carved wood. That makes it all the more remarkable to see stone structures like these, built by the people of the Caucasus, who were sent here by Stalin during the rough years of World War II. Take this tower, which is a brilliant example of Chechen architecture. Chechen tribes would often be involved in blood feuds, and they would build these defensive fortifications taller and taller and taller to try to gain an advantage over their foes. It's quite dark inside, but we can scramble up the stairs to see how high we can get over our enemies.
These stone towers were first built by the Nakh people of the Caucasus Mountains thousands of years ago. Some were used exclusively for defense, but others were residential. 2 to 4 stories high, their walls tapering a bit at the top, they're quite the home to have.
Just across the way from the Chechens is another defensive tower belonging to a different Caucasian ethnic group, the Georgians. But don't get the idea that these were the foes that we were speaking of. Georgians and Chechens have lived together in peace here for quite some time, and indeed all ethnic groups in Kazakhstan have really achieved a remarkable degree of ethnic harmony. Already in the front yard, we can see a building that is connected to the thing that makes Georgians famous, their wine. This building is a storage facility for grapes and for the intoxicating drink that comes from them. Across the way, we can see this cart with a massive amphora on it, this kind of clay vessel. These things would be filled with the wine and buried underground in a unique winemaking process that can only be found in the Republic of Georgia.
These large earthenware vessels called kvevri would be buried for 5 or 6 months while the grape juice fermented. Though this kind of winemaking can't be found in Kazakhstan, the kvevri here represent the love Georgians have for their traditions and for their motherland.
When we come into the home, the wine theme continues with grapes on the table, these beautiful vessels back here that would be used to store the wine, and, of course, a horn. Yes, horns would also be used for wine drinking vessels filled up during great feasts. If grapes are the main ingredient in much of what Georgians love to drink, then it's corn that is the main ingredient in much of what they eat. And this building out in the yard is used to dry corn. You can see it's specially constructed actually to allow ventilation. It has these wooden lattices here that let the cool breezes of eastern Kazakhstan pass through to dry out the corn, which can then be used to make corn porridge and corn bread and dozens of other Georgian recipes. Perhaps the most beautiful home in the entire cultural village is this one, which was brought log by log from the Altai town of Katon-Karagay. It belonged to a people from a Russian Orthodox sect called the Old Believers.
After the Russian Orthodox Church was reformed by Patriarch Nikon of Moscow in the 17th century, the so-called Old Believers continued to maintain old church rituals, and they're now known for their conservative lifestyles and insularity. Old Believers often sought remote areas where they could practice their old-fashioned faith in peace, and the Altai Mountains of eastern Kazakhstan provided a perfect refuge.
An Old Believer home like this would be like a family compound with many generations all living under one roof. This room up on the second floor would have been the room of a young married couple. This bed, believe it or not, would suffice for just this pair, while their newborn baby might be over here in this kind of rocking crib that is called a yulka. I can imagine how peaceful it must be to be in here, rocking back and forth and laying in the darkness. One thing that was special about the Old Believers is just how self-reliant they were. So they really made everything that you see in this room themselves, including their own clothing. So they would use this massive loom to weave their own clothes. A famous part of this Old Believer sustainability is that they would always grow their own food. So a classic part of any Old Believer estate is a large, beautiful garden like this one that they have at the cultural village. Here they're growing pumpkins and cabbage and squash, and at this time of year, it just looks amazing. But if there's any food stuff that Old Believers were famous for, it was for their honey. we took a trip out to the Altai to visit a legendary beekeeper named Vera Klimova.
Back in the same Katon-Karagay National Park where we met Baygazhi is the Klimova farm. People come here from all over Kazakhstan, and even Russia and the West, to take in the fresh air, beautiful scenery, and the special energy that comes with thousands of buzzing bees. Greeting us at the entrance to her farm was Vera Pavlovna Klimova herself, a woman full of love and peaceful energy.
Здравствуйте.
Hello.
Hi, Dennis.
Очень приятно.
Nice to meet you.
Me too.
Приятно. Какой у вас?
What a wonderful place you have here.
Ну, говорят, что Катон-Карагай.
They say that Katon-Karagay is heaven.
И это Алтай, это...
This is the Altai. You can feel the place here has a certain spirit.
Чувствуется
You can feel the spirit of Beluga, our most biggest mountain, and its magical power. The spirit spreads over this land and it gives you the feeling of power. That's why when people come here, they say that if there is a heaven on earth, then it's Katon-Karagay.
на свете рай, то это Катон-Карагай.
For a one-of-a-kind workshop called the Land Art Symposium, artists from Russia, Belarus, and Kyrgyzstan came to Vera Pavlovna's farm to build beautiful sculptures out of recycled materials. Some used old pieces of metal to make whimsical figures. Others carved animals from wood, while others painted rocks to make joyous creatures. The theme of the event, Vera Pavlovna told us, was unity. Both unity between different nationalities and unity with nature. The visual center point of the Pavlovna farm is a gorgeous wooden chapel, which Vera dedicated to the memory of her father, Mikhail Fyodorovich, who first started this homestead. The building is just as modest on the inside as it is on the exterior, but this minimalism creates a relaxing essence. The Klimova farm is a place for art and spirituality, but let's not forget that it's home to thousands of bees, whose Altai honey is prized all over Kazakhstan. You can get up close and personal with these stinging buggers, but it helps to have a bee smoker filled with smoldering fir chips. This contraption can calm the nerves of nervous honeybees. It also helps to have protective clothing, so Vera Pavlovna told me to get suited up for the job.
Это сетка
We call this a net.
называется. Она одевается.
You should wear it like this.
It's like a cute little summer hat.
Да.
Симпатично.
И вот так вот.
That's for your safety.
Это из соображений безопасности.
So this is for my safety, to keep my face from getting stung. But to be honest, I think that if you're calm and you're friendly with the bees, they're going to be calm and friendly with you too.
Так, все, идем.
Let's go to the apiary.
Inside just one beehive, Vera Pavlovna told me, were 2,000 to 3,000 bees, with the biggest ones having as many as 10,000. The sound of thousands of beings buzzing was entrancing. When we opened up the hives, we would discover some honey, of course, but also different kinds of bee excretions, like the sticky goop called propolis.
Вот это вот прополис.
Okay, а скажите нам, что такое propolis?
Propolis is a very strong antiseptic. The bees produce it to decontaminate the air in the hive. If there is some kind of hole between the frames, they fix it with propolis.
Вот здесь вот, допустим, есть щель, да, вот здесь между рамочками. Они его залепляют прополисом.
Propolis is something that I had never heard of before I went to a Kazakh bazaar. And this is something that's widely sold along with honey. In America, you'll often just find the honey products, but here they're really big on using every last piece of the process. So this propolis, which in English is sometimes called bee glue, can be found all the way around there, and they'll scrape that off, roll it into these little balls, and use it as a kind of medicinal treatment.
In addition to propolis, the hives also contain a special white substance called royal jelly. In Russian, it's called mother's milk because it helps to develop the special larvae that will produce a hive's new queen. Vera Pavlovna also showed me what some people call bee bread, but what Russians call pirga.
Денис, мы с вами сейчас говорили о том, какие, кроме меда, еще продукты пчеловодства.
Dennis, we just saw what kind of beekeeping products we can use besides honey, but we can also use bees while they're alive, and will help you heal. We offer a special procedure where you sleep on beehives. These little buildings are made especially for that. Let's go, I'll show you.
Пойдемте, я вам покажу.
Это первый раз я это слышу.
Вот пойдемте, я вам покажу, как это все интересно. Так, вот эти домики, мы их построили, но мы их еще не запустили. Как бы вот. А вот этот домик...
These buildings are already done, and this one is already open. Look, the bees go in there.
Это пчелы.
Ага. А почему они?
So why do they want to go in there?
Там находятся ульи.
Their hives are in there.
А вот это вот литки
Those are the openings where they can fly in.
вылетают. Заходите. Вот. Ну вот здесь вот давайте лучше посмотрим.
A bee bed right here that she's preparing for us. And underneath there are
Я
the hives
сейчас
themselves.
открою,
Хорошо.
и вы посмотрите.
Okay.
I'll open it for you to be sure that there are bees inside.
Right there underneath the panel and stuff, you can hear the ferocious buzzing of those bees. Would you sleep on this? She says that actually it is quite a good treatment.
Вот эти вот прорези, они...
We need these holes to feel the heat that emanates from the hives.
Присаживайтесь.
Have a seat.
И вы сразу почувствуете
I don't want to get my butt stung.
You can feel some warmth.
Конечно, есть. Вот это по-научному
Sleeping on beehives is called bioresonance therapy.
То есть здесь пчелы лечат своим биополем, они воздействуют своим...
That means that bees can treat you with their biological field. That's the first thing.
Второе. Вот это вот тепло...
And the second thing is that the heat that comes out of their warms our muscles.
Глубокое прогревание мышц. Буквально вот это прогревание мышцы, как один у нас здесь приезжает спортсмен.
We have one athlete guest that likes to come here, and he said that their center, they have a kind of French special medical machine that works exactly like these beds.
Делает глубокое прогревание мышцы. И я, говорит, прочувствовал точно такое же вот на этих пчелиных.
It warms the muscles the same way. When you're sitting near the oven, you feel the heat, but it's an external feeling, and here's an internal warmth.
А здесь внутрь проходит.
Heating you from within. So, as she's saying, you don't need any kind of modern French technology. This is about as ancient as it gets. She was saying that people have been working with these bees since the beginning of mankind. And so all you have to do is come here, get in touch with your roots, and lay down with your bee brothers on a bee bed. Well, I think in the name of science, I have to try this bee bed out for myself. To lay down here on top of these hives and to feel the vibration of these bees below. We'll see if it has any effect. I think I can feel it already. I hope that these explorations of Altai and its culture have had some effect on you. Until next time, I'm going to take a little nap. Salvo, пока, and goodbye.